Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webcast today on medical tourism and the cure for Hep C. I'm Jonathan Edelheit, the CEO of the Medical Tourism Association. Excited to bring you this presentation today that's kind of really cutting edge on the new medications and treatments that have amazing cure rates like Sovaldi from Gilead, and some of the challenges a lot of self-funded employers, PBMs, and insurance companies are having with a really high cost, of $84,000 or more for treatment. My background is from the insurance world and running a big national TPA, doing a lot of self-funding for large national employers and state governments. And I was the first person back in the early 2000s to implement medical tourism in a self-funded plans. So I'm going to really talk about, what's going on with these new treatment secure rates, the impact on costs for state governments, for the employers, the insurance companies, alternatives, and then how medical tourism really provides an amazing solution, and how there is a turnkey solution right now that can have a significant impact in saving billions of dollars for the system. So obviously, Sovaldi is the new miracle drug in Hep C treatment, and I'm sure we all have a lot of family and friends who have it, and hepatitis C treatment costs are expected to go up by 1,800% by 2016 just because of Sovaldi, so massive increase. But that's because it's a breakthrough therapy that has a 98% success rate, so it pretty much cures it. So it has such a big impact, and so you're going to have a rush of people that are coming onto this to actually get the treatment and get cured. And so we're getting a lot of pushback from the governments, insurance companies, and employers and PBMs on these high costs. So, this is going into the, really how over the next 2 years you're going to see a huge increase in price, that employers and insurance companies are going to have to bear the burden of, as you have, the people that currently have Hep C go on the drug and actually get cured, and then you're going to see the cost slowly start to, decrease going forward. So if we look at state spending on Hep C with Sovaldi, it impacts more than Hep C impacts more than 3 million Americans. It's a degenerative disease of the liver. Eventually you're going to need a transplant. It's nationally more than 750,000 Medicaid patients and prisoners or under state health programs suffer from Hep C, and it's going to be one of the biggest burdens that states are going to have, that they're not funded for it, and they're not ready financially to pay for it. So one of the nation's largest Medicaid populations, California, faces a $6.7 billion hepatitis C drug for the 93,000 Medi-Cal enrollees and prisoners that have the disease. So this is basically a cost of $174 per resident in the state of California. If we look at Louisiana, it's got the highest cost per resident at $294, and Florida and New York could see nearly a $4 billion each cost in Hep C spending. So this has massive implications. And in Louisiana, which is the top 5 states with the highest per capita spending, and then you got Delaware, which is at $265, Mississippi at $259 per resident, Oklahoma at $223, and Texas at $200. So the cost is really high. So, this is spreading the cost off over all the residents of the state. And Medicaid may actually have to spend $55 billion of taxpayer money just to pay for Hep C treatment with Sovaldi. And it's a big challenge, because how do you say we're not going to cover it? Because if you have Hep C, the previous treatments might have had a 50% ratio of success, sometimes lower, higher, depending on what you had, and this one almost cures the condition. So everybody is going to want this. Everybody is going to demand this. And then you have some states and even private insurers who are looking to restrict approval of Sovaldi and looking at, we're only going to provide it for people with advanced Hep C liver disease. So, it's going to be a big controversy and fight, going forward, because at the end of the day, it comes down to dollars. And then you got to look at what's going to be the out-of-pocket costs, deductibles, co-insurance for employees, depending on how that's structured, whether it's fully insured or whether it's self-funded. And then one of the questions you have to ask today, if any of you weren't following the news, because I just did a healthcare reform webcast with 2 of the top national attorneys in healthcare reform, but you have the D.C. Appeals Court today, basically saying that the federal subsidies for the exchanges aren't valid, and that the IRS overreached. And, does that mean that the federal subsidies now are no longer valid, and, the 7 million people who came on to the healthcare reform coverage aren't going to get those subsidies? They're going to have to pay those subsidies back. It's a real problem, because for those people, they're going to want access to Sovaldi. Are they going to be able to afford health insurance now that's going to cover Sovaldi treatment? So Gilead, who's the maker of Sovaldi, has argued that obviously it's going to save on future healthcare costs by curing Hep C patients. And, they earned $2.27 billion in their first quarter, and they're on pace to earn about $5 billion during the second quarter of 2014. So this is going to be one of the biggest moneymaker for them. And its production cost is $130 a pill, and they're selling it to U.S. patients at basically $1,000 a pill. So a very big markup. And, they hired a consulting firm to look at where they priced the drug in the U.S. market, and that I believe that was around $32,000 or $34,000 that it was recommended that they come into the U.S. market with that drug. But it's a cure, so they've come in at a much higher price, which is $84,000. Now, also, you were seeing where you're using the Olysio treatment, another drug, in combination with Sovaldi, or Olysio being used with other things. Now, if you use the Olysio with the 12-week treatment program, the Olysio would cost $65,000. But if you combine that with Sovaldi, it can be over $140,000. And if you're a patient and you have Hep C, are you going to say, I just want Sovaldi? Or I want both Sovaldi and Olysio, where I'm having even a higher chance of success? So now you're looking at cost for Hep C at potentially $140,000, because Olysio alone, it's around an 80% cure rate. So Sovaldi's development costs for the drug, Gilead's, was $11 billion, and that development cost is going to be recovered in the first year of their U.S. sales alone, because they're charging $84,000 for treatment. And why are they able to do that? Well, I already said it's because, of the high cure rate. And if someone doesn't get this cure and they need a liver transplant, that can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then the patient's also going to need anti-rejection medication, which can cost $40,000 a year for the rest of their lives. So for some patients, it could be millions of dollars around that liver transplant. So they know if they can provide a cure at $84,000, they can charge for it. And also, there's arguments, there's congressional hearings going on with this right now regarding, Congress and a lot of people doing an outcry saying they're charging too much, Gilead, for the Sovaldi drug. And, and they're making the argument that the United States is subsidizing the rest of the world. So what's interesting is in Egypt, for example, Sovaldi is 99% less than it is in the U.S. And Gilead admits their global pricing model is based on a country's ability to pay for the actual drug. And in a couple slides, we'll be getting into why then medical tourism. So if we look at, Sovaldi, when it's prescribed along with, the other medication, you're talking about $1,200 per treatment, and that's, around per pill, $1,000 to $1,200, where Olysio is $65,000 per treatment. And, they're expecting coming this fall also a single pill version versus having to take one pill each day. And as I was saying before, the 12-week treatment is $84,000. And with Olysio, it's $140,000. So, and this costs 3 times more than the other Hep C drugs, which also have more costlier side effects and less cure rates. So now let's look at the pricing. This is the chart that I really love. Let's look at how much this costs everywhere else. So in Canada, how much is it? $55,000. The U.S., $84,000. Brazil, almost $840. Egypt, $840. And if you're not aware, in Egypt, almost 25% of the Egyptian population has Hep C. In the United Kingdom, $57,000. In Germany, $66,000. Myanmar, $900. India, almost $900. In Kenya, $900. So, hey, why don't we put individuals on plane? We can send them on to one of the most top luxury, amazing safaris in the world that would be on their bucket list. And we can give them $30,000 for the safari in Kenya. And they will go ahead and get that medication significantly still. That would be what, 60% cheaper than in the U.S. So, you know, in looking at some of the case studies from Sovaldi, the results are really amazing. So one of the things is I'm very excited about Sovaldi, and obviously excited about, you know, even some competitors to Gilead who are coming out with Hep C drugs, because this is a thing that plagues a lot of people here in the U.S. A lot of, you know, I'm sure there's even people on this call that have loved ones and friends that have Hep C. And if you have it, you know, it's a disease, you want it out of your body. You don't want to be sick. You don't want to have liver failure. You don't want a liver treatment. So to know that you can get cured is amazing. So this is the game changer from just a couple of years ago. So the one case study is Michelle Carver of New York, who's 55 years old. She took the combination of Sovaldi and Olysio each day at breakfast, just like her vitamins. And 4 weeks into the treatment, she tested negative for Hep C. That's amazing. And because of that, you know, she's not necessarily going to have to complete the whole treatment, which would have cost $140,000. So there's different combinations and things that you need to necessarily take. You know, there's 17,000 new hepatitis cases each year in the U.S. And the amazing thing that no one's even talking about in the media, they're really talking about price, is if we go ahead and cure everyone in the U.S., does that mean there's going to be a significant drop in hepatitis C claims? And there's 350,000 people every year who die from hepatitis globally, hepatitis-related liver diseases. So it's amazing that we finally have a cure. But I think we all know, you know, everyone's on the call, is this is a cost issue from the PBM side. And my background is, you know, self-funding and running a big national TPA for many years. And we know there's a lot of other biologics and specialty drugs coming down the pipeline. And so we need to control these costs, you know, quite significantly. And this is just a chart about the prevalence of hepatitis C and the number of affected people. So if you look in China, one of the world's biggest countries, a large number, they're number one, then India, then Egypt, then Indonesia, then Pakistan, then Russia, then the U.S., then the Congo. So it really, you know, it's a big issue all over the world. In other countries, governments negotiate the prices, and you know, Medicare is prohibited by law from doing so. You know, so there's a big challenge, and also along with this, you know, there was a little bit, you know, it's not really talked about a lot, but pharmaceutical companies supported the Affordable Care Act as long as the U.S. government didn't really try to negotiate or set drug prices. You know, so this is you know the bed we have to sleep in now that these expensive drugs are coming out going forward. And demand is only going to be, you know, going to be much greater as more case studies and more personal stories of people here in the U.S. who are getting Sovaldi treatment and come and say they're cured. It's going to create a race for people to also want to get this treatment. So we do have some other drugs coming in the pipeline later on in 2014 from companies like AbbVie and others. And, you know, this is going to be the area that the PBMs are going to have to really focus on and become really great educators to patients and stay on top of the cure rates and how they're going to handle this. So where does medical tourism come into play? So just, you know, to give you some quick background for everyone on the call, you know, I've done self-funding for many years on a national basis for a lot of big employers and insurance companies. I was the first one to implement it back in the early 2000s. You know, I worked with, besides employers, insurance companies and TPAs, worked with the reinsurers, worked with all the national media. We put together amazing stories, which I'll go into in a couple minutes, with Nightline, ABC News, CBS News, Diane Sawyer. You know, there's a big trend in the U.S. for medical tourism. In the next couple of years, you're going to see it where it's commonplace. And there's domestic and then there's international. And domestic is like, you know, where you have Lowe's partnering with the Cleveland Clinic, Johns Hopkins with Pepsi, and you got Boeing and Walmart doing it. But obviously that doesn't help with Hep C because the price is the price here in the U.S. So, but with medical tourism, you can allow whether it's the insured, the employee, the plan member, whatever you'd like to refer to them as, to travel for that Hep C treatment. There's a whole ecosystem in place that can be turnkey, that you can do it today in, where you've got the whole technology platform for that's HIPAA compliant, that allows the patient to transfer the medical records of their prescription, to communicate with the doctor overseas through telemedicine, to go over for care, to get the drug, to get the treatment, and then to be able to, while they're there, even do the continuum of care through telemedicine with their own doctor who can have access to the same technology system. So, and then they go back and they're then treated by their American doctor again, and they can do that continuum of care. And I don't think you're going to see a lot of pushback from the American doctors with their patients going overseas for the drug, because it's $84,000 versus almost $900 in Brazil. So I think they're going to completely understand that difference, and we haven't seen any kind of issue with aftercare continuum of care. So you're getting the same drug as you would here in the U.S. You're putting the patient on a plane with a companion or a loved one for a getaway. And I call it a getaway because this is something that is clearly, you're going to actually be able to combine the tourism. If you're going for, cancer treatment or orthopedics, you're going to be limited into the type of tourism you can do. But really, with this kind of treatment, it's whatever the doctor allows you to do or recommends, but it's not as restrictive. So this can actually turn into true vacation for someone going for this Hep C, the Sovaldi medication. And then how it would work with it is, you're waiving the employees out-of-pocket costs, their deductibles, their co-pays, their co-insurance. You're covering 100% of the treatment. You're covering the travel expenses for the patient and a loved one or a family member, airfare, hotel, food, everything. There's going to be really no wait time to get in to actually get the drug or the treatment. So it's something that's a turnkey solution, and you can give, through, our association is helping some insurers and some big PBMs and consulting firms implement this. It's really a turnkey solution, and it's a win-win. And then also you can give that employee or their plan member a percentage of the savings or a check or extra vacation days for going and getting the treatment. So just to go over a couple stories that we've covered, so that just so you don't think, this is something that, would people actually go travel for Hep C treatment to cure to cure Hep C to another country? Are employers going to do it? Is this really going to work? And the answer is, it's happening now. It's just people aren't talking about it. So one example is Hickory Springs Manufacturing Company, HSM. They're a member of our association. Last year we put together a whole piece that we worked a couple months with Nightline and Diane Sawyer's team on ABC. And it was all about, for the past 5 years, they sent 250 employees overseas for medical tourism, whether it was orthopedics or bariatric. They saved $10 million. And then on the actual video piece, and if you email me, I'll share with you the link. They actually, the knee replacement that would have been almost $60,000 here was about $23,000 in Costa Rica. North Carolina, they did a gastric sleeve that would have been $30,000. It was about $17,000 in Costa Rica. They saved about almost $50,000, and they gave their employees a bonus check of $2,500 each for traveling for care. And they were sending patients to India and Costa Rica. So just to be clear, this is not like a test or a pilot. You're talking about 5 years, 250 employees. And now there's a whole culture shift within the company where the employees prefer to go overseas for care. And I think what you'll see is over the next couple of years, 1 to 2 years is even more than went in the previous 5 years. So it works. The employees love it, and they're doing it. And then we just put together a great piece with CBS News last week, where Blue Lake Casino, one of our members of the MTA, sent a patient over to France for a rotator cuff surgery for medical tourism, and the patient loved it. And they loved being in France and being able to experience France. And they spent 21 days there, had a very successful surgery, post-op recovery, aftercare, sightseeing. He brought his wife, and they saved 50% for the employer. This is a no-brainer, and it's a win-win. And if you'd like, I'll also send you the link so you can watch the CBS News video. So this is a common sense thing. You're talking $4,000 versus $900. You're talking about sending them to a hospital that's accredited by the Joint Commission International, which is, the Joint Commission accredits U.S. hospitals. Even can be done so that the doctors, board-certified American doctor. This is something that I think whichever PBM gets on it and implements it, or whichever consulting firm, they have a chance to pick up all kinds of new clients like never before, really differentiate themselves, and save their clients billions of dollars. And you can charge a fee for putting in the program, or you can take a percentage of the savings, which could be very huge. And really, the leaders in this case are going to be the ones that do it first, because Sovaldi with Hep C is just a start. There are so many biologics and specialty drugs coming down the pipeline. There's a lot of personalized medicine that's going to really kill employers. And we all know the Affordable Care Act doesn't reduce pharmaceutical costs, medical supply costs. It doesn't lower the cost of insurance. So you need to do innovative things to really put in place, for savings. So I know we really allocated about 30 minutes for this webcast. If anybody has any questions and answers, feel free to type in the box. Otherwise, you can go ahead and email me at john@medicaltourismassociation.com, or you could call us at 561-791-2000. Also, I'd like to invite everyone, to our annual conference, which is coming up in just a couple weeks. It's going to be September 20th through the 24th in Washington, D.C. And we're going to have about 2,200 attendees. And if any of you would like to reach out and connect with me regarding, putting together a Hep C medical tourism program for your PBM firm or your employer, please let me know. We're really the only ones in the world who can really put this together. And that's because you have to have the HIPAA privacy, the medical technology behind it, but more importantly, the service and infrastructure to deal with the patients. And there are some interesting proposals being put out there, including, taking a cruise ship and, having, picking up patients in some major cities in the U.S., whether it's New York City or not, taking that out to international waters for a weekend cruise or an overnight cruise, people getting their Hep C medication and being brought back to the U.S. And because the savings are so huge, really I think there's a lot of innovation surrounding this. And I think it's great because I think you're going to see a lot of people traveling for Hep C, and at a minimum, I think this is going to really push this topic to the forefront, and it also could force Gilead to maybe lower the cost of what they're charging for, for Sovaldi, if they know that Americans are going to start traveling abroad for it. But at the end of the day, I don't necessarily see that happening because they know the U.S. is the biggest market. They know the U.S. is going to pay for it, and that's going to subsidize their profits for the rest of the world, because in the rest of the world, they can't charge that because the people can't afford it or the government can't afford it, and then people are going to die. So that becomes a very bad PR issue, but they don't necessarily have that issue in the U.S. because they know if they offer it, the insurance company, the employer, the federal government is going to pay for it. So with that, I really want to thank everyone for coming on the webcast. Please email me if you have any questions. We're going to be providing more updates on this, and also we're going to be doing some providing out some free Hep C treatments in partnerships with some hospitals for some patients to travel through medical tourism for it. So if you have any members that you'd even like to pilot this program with, please also reach out to me. We'd love to work with you on it, and that can develop an amazing case story and case study that can be used to encourage others to travel for care. So with that, thank you very much for coming on the webcast, and I hope everyone has a great week. Take care.